Of all the things that could change your life today, genetic engineering may be the most important. Let's talk about it. And here to talk about it with us today, Tom Horn and Joe Ardis. Guys, welcome to Prophecy Watchers.
Great to be with you again, Gary, as always.
Good to be here, Gary, yep.
Tom, sitting down and talking with you is always a pleasure, and we're going to talk about something that I think most people have never heard about. It's featured in your new documentary. It's called Inhuman. This is, I believe this documentary should be in the hands of every Christian today. Now, I don't say that about every DVD set that I pick up. This one, on the other hand, I think has tremendous weight. Let's talk about it. How did you begin to put together this documentary called Inhuman?
Yeah, thanks for asking me that. And by the way, since you've seen the film, you might understand how, now looking backward, if I had understood the scope of this project when I started out, I'd have said, never mind, it's just way too big for me. Took us 5 years. But you know, one of the lead questions on every program we're doing right now that people are asking is, how did you get started with this? What caused you to do it? Why did you do it? Why do you think it's important for the church? And it really is interesting because you're here in Oklahoma City. And about 10 years ago, I was actually writing a feature article for one of the largest newspapers here in Oklahoma on the subject of Halloween, by the way. The internet was still pretty young then. I'm in the internet. I'm trying to find some history. But I came across a term, I'd never seen it before, called transgenics. And I thought, what in the world? And it took me a moment to kind of wrap my mind around it. And then I started getting, okay, transgenetics, transgenes. Somehow here we're talking about crossing over species barriers. We're talking about combining different kinds of life forms or whatever in ways that neither God or, if you're an evolution believer, evolution didn't allow for. So I got real interested in it. Make a long story short, I went from being interested to also being concerned, and because I'm a prophecy believer and I'm a biblical literalist, I started seeing a lot of stuff in this whole idea, what we're going to cross over species barriers? Didn't God order each kind to reproduce only after its own kind? What does he know we don't know? So I wrote some material and it went online and went viral. Well, pretty soon, people I'd never heard of before, they're the world's leading transhumanists, and now they're coming after me. We're talking about James Hughes, who wound up being in this documentary, one of the original founders of the modern transhumanist movement. Max Moore, who's considered to be the father of the modern transhumanist movement, and if people don't know what the term transhumanist or transhumanism is, it's just the title we give to people who believe that we're going to use technology now, including genetics, which you started off talking about, to modify what it means to be human. We're going to use these new powerful emerging fields of science, robotics, artificial intelligence, right? Ray Kurzweil, we're going to have nanobots in our brain, synthetic biology, genetics. We're going to use that to change ourselves. We're going to change our genetic makeup, make ourselves stronger, healthier, faster, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. We're going to interface our brain with artificial intelligence systems. So that's what they believe. And they were taking real issue with this fat preacher, Tom Horn, out there saying, hey, there might be some lines here that we don't want to race across, right? So and now I find out that at their big transhumanist conferences, they're being highly critical of Tom Horn. They're saying we got to figure out how to deal with guys like this, right?
Indeed. Genetic manipulation is what we're talking about. Genetic manipulation in animals, in plants, and in humans. Here's the thing that gets me, Tom. God created man in his own image and likeness. In other words, God created us the way he wanted us to be. Man comes along and says, you know, that's not good enough. I think we can improve on the original model. And for me, blasphemy is trying to improve on God's work. It just flies in the face of everything that I understand about the Bible. And yet, and I'm looking at Matthew 24, 37, and we've repeated this verse so many times. I've got it marked in yellow in my Bible here, and I read it all the time. And every time I read it, some new impact hits me because of the work that people like you are doing. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. How were the days of Noah?
Yeah, well, I think we agree, most scholars would, that probably if you had to pick one thing that, I mean, really kind of branded the days of Noah as different than any other day, it was a time when genetic manipulation was occurring. The stories are told outside the Bible, also repeated in the book of Genesis in the Bible, about these days of Noah when the Watchers, powerful angels, descended down in the days of Jared, Noah's grandfather, and they started, manipulating human DNA. In fact, eventually all life, the book of Genesis says, man and beast. So there was this broad genetic corruption that led to the corruption of what God had made, and evidently it was so catastrophic that it led to God determining the only way to deal with this is you have to wipe out everything on earth except Noah,
right.
Which also in Genesis 6, right? He was found perfect in his generation.
He separated himself from the population at large, and he was not corrupted genetically, as were all the other beings on planet Earth. And we're headed that way again, as it was in the days of Noah.
That's exactly right. Now we are repeating, for the first time since the Great Flood, what we only have a record of ever having happened once before, and that is we're crossing over genetic barriers. Now, I've often thought that when you look into all of the records of history around the world, whether it was the Assyrians, the Egyptians, the Greek, they all have these chimeras. They all have these ancient stories about these entities that came down, and then they blended animals and humans, and they made these monstrosities. And those stand as kind of a mute testimony.
And those monstrosities were gods. They had the heads of animals,
right,
and the bodies of men, and they were worshipped as gods by the Egyptians.
And the Apostle Paul writes about that in the New Testament, talking about how they worshiped the creation more than the Creator, and these entities took to themselves deity statehood or whatever, and it became demonic. So to answer your question, that's why we got started down this road and why we worked so long to produce a documentary, to really ask the question from all different points of view. We have the world's leading transhumanists in this film talking about what they believe. On the other end, we have current members of the U.S. President's Council on Bioethics, men like Professor Hurlbut from Stanford University, talking about the conservative side of this. And then right in the middle, of course, what we did that nobody's ever done before was we took all these worldviews, and in the middle of it, we dumped who we think to be the world's leading prophecy scholars. And we said, now, gentlemen, is there something prophetic about what we're talking about? Not just is this an insult to God's creative genius. Not just could we create new disease strains because we're doing things that nothing in the world has allowed for, but could it also be a fulfillment of Matthew 24:37?
And the result in Inhuman is electrifying. And I believe me, I'm not given to exaggeration. This is truly electrying. Inhuman, the next and final phase of man is here. Sitting to Tom Horn's left is Joe Ardis, producer, director. You've done a lot to bring all this together. You are an animal behavior specialist, and you deal with the animal world, animals as they relate to human beings. And you've recently completed a work on what's this book about? It's called Dead Pets Don't Lie, but it's way more than dead pets.
Well, to kind of get started on Dead Pets Don't Lie, I kind of have to back up to my involvement as one of the producers and being involved in the Inhuman documentary that you're talking about. I had the privilege for more than 5 years. 5 years was the production, but before that, the idea of the whole Inhuman movie really started with Tom and his Skywatch team. But I had the privilege of traveling with Tom for multiple years, as the director of lighting and photography. So I was the guy behind the camera in most of the interviews that people that watch the film might see, including yours, Gary.
I remember it well.
Yes.
I do.
Yeah, and of course, being in the presence of so many of what I consider the leading experts in the field of transhumanism, these sciences, nanotechnology, genetic manipulation of the genome that creates various species types, everything from plants to animals.
Now, you
Yes.
just said it, plants.
Yes.
Because we've been talking about animal experimentation, even human experimentation in genetics, but we haven't talked about foods yet. The food supply is
Right.
being genetically manipulated.
It is. On the Skywatch program, recently we had a high-level trained holistic veterinarian named Dr. Jean Hovey. She's a dear friend of mine, very high-level trained, and she basically truncated the explanation that I'll share with you about how our animals, this is not just our pet animals, but it's the ones that we're eating. It's the ones that we're taking care, it's the ones that are placed on farms. It's the ones we're using for therapeutic work. It's all species, all animals. They're being fed things that are not native to what they should be eating.
Wow.
Things like cattle eating genetically modified corn, okay, when they should be feeding on grass. Well, what are the ramifications? We know that in science, for example, mice that are under the microscope, that are being presented with the option to eat genetically modified potatoes, for example, versus an organic potato, will always rush to the fully organic potato every single time. A mouse will do this. And sometimes, when they deny them the organic potato, the mice will gravitate finally out of starvation, pure survival instincts. They will finally eat the genetically modified potato. And sometimes the symptoms of the ramifications, the health side effects, are not visible in the first generation mouse. Sometimes they begin to kick in the second generation, and by the third generation of mice that have only been fed genetically modified foods, you're seeing the length of life cut in half. Plenty of them are sterile. The percentages of all kinds of kidney failures, blindness, are through the sky.
So why are we doing
So
this?
why do we care?
Yeah.
Because I think we can learn from animals. They have much shorter they have much shorter lifespans. And if we look at what science is doing, the inhumane experimentation, the things that they're doing right now with animals, we can learn a lot about what's happening to us as humans, as a species. For example, in the United States alone, every single day, 25,000 shipments of food are brought into the U.S. from other countries. The FDA, and by the way, Gary, a lot of people have this assumption that the FDA or some other benevolent branch of the government is able to regulate all of these foods coming in, that they're keeping a watchful eye. People don't have to do any thinking. They can pull anything they want off the grocery shelves, and it's safe because the FDA or an organization like that is watching out for them, and that's not the case. 1%, Gary, 1% of the 25,000 shipments we see come into the U.S. every single day, they only have the manpower and the ability to facilitate inspection, examination, scrutiny of about 1% of those foods. So we're putting our faith in countries like China to not chemically treat the meats, to represent them safely for what they are.
And that's about all you need to say about that.
That's right. That's right.
Now,
but Gene Hovey's been able to demonstrate how what we're eating is changing our physiology.
Wow.
Species of animals that are third generation.
And that includes human beings.
That includes human beings. So it's very easy to be overwhelmed by this discussion.
And she sits on boards with the FDA and whatever. She is a highly
AFCO.
qualified individual.
That's right.
And when she tells you that the foods that are being consumed are changing, rewriting the DNA, and that it's becoming heritable, second generation, third generation are getting the negative health results of consuming those products, then yeah, what is the animal kingdom already teaching us about what we could be doing to ourselves? Why do we have an explosion right now of a return of diseases that were almost eradicated? Attention deficit disorders, Down syndrome, all these kinds of things.
So now we've got two aspects of genetic modification, the food supply and the beings themselves. Animals, of course, have been subjects of genetic modification experiments for years. Humans have too, only it's been kept very, very quiet. And Tom, I want to get back to your work and the work that is really spoken of loudly and clearly in the documentary Inhuman, and that is the attempt by certain parties to create a superior human being through genetic modification. And let me say this before I turn it back over to Tom. When we think of genetic modification, we think of huge laboratories, we think of multi-million-dollar equipment, we think of huge procedures that take years. We're going to show you something in a minute that will blow your mind, because Tom has actually brought a, if you will, a show and tell that is mind-boggling. In fact, it's frightening to me, Tom.
Yeah.
The implications.
Well, so here's the thing. And there's several reasons why I brought this with me today. This is actually, Gary, if you want to hold that.
I'll hold this.
I'll get rid of this big container.
This is a refrigerated container.
This is a refrigerated container, and what's inside the container is a CRISPR Cas9, and this kit in particular is designed for use in actually doing modifications to human DNA. That's specifically what this kit is actually created for. Now,
in this box.
It's inside this box. Well, inside the box, if Tom Horn owned a laboratory, I would pull out the user's manual, and then you can see all the little vials inside here.
Absolutely.
Which then could be used to, using a syringe, introduce these vials in their proper order, intravenously. This is coded to actually go to a particular place in the DNA strand to do a particular thing with the genes where it's instructed to go. To put this in real layman's terms, what a CRISPR kit is, it's cut and paste for any kind of a species that procreates using sperm and eggs. So all mammals, humans, all the animals that you know of, you can use this kit to cut the strands in its DNA, do gene therapy, do genetic, cutting out perhaps a defective gene.
Eliminating a defective
gene. And then
gene.
it glues that strand back together so that it's uninterrupted, and you have performed a modification to the genetic makeup of that species. And this is, of course, this one here is made actually to be used, a gene knockout kit. This is made to be used on a human. Now,
let me just say that we'll put this word on the screen for you, CRISPR. It's an acronym, and let me just read what CRISPR stands for. Clustered, regularly interspersed short palindromic repeats. Palindrome. A palindrome is something that reads the same in both directions. Like Madam, I'm Adam reads Madam, I'm Adam backwards.
Right.
And so these palindromic injectables will intersperse themselves right into a genetic sequence.
Right.
And change the sequence. That is diabolical.
Well,
because, I mean, you can say, well, you can cure diseases, but you can also change the nature of the being.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah, so the way that CRISPR-Cas9 is being sold is for its therapeutic promises. I mean, human trials are going to start very quickly using this kind of technology in hopes of finding a cure to cancer. Well, who wouldn't want that, right? Gene therapy to lead to a kind of cure for cancer, other kinds of diseases. You want to put this back
Sure,
there?
well, we'll just put that right there. Sure.
I feel more comfortable with it closed.
Yeah, let's leave the lid on that.
You remember the old television, or the old movie Gattaca?
I do.
And the idea that all humans born in the future have to go through this process. They can only be genetically engineered. There's nothing left of like man meets woman and they fall in love and they have children and we leave it all to nature. In the future, everybody's genetically engineered. Well, this is actually now in real life no longer sci-fi. This is the kind of technology that you could use to begin altering the genetic makeup of all humans down line.
We were headed for a minimum requirement for human beings. In other words, you have to be genetically at such and such a level before you'll be accepted maybe as a real human being.
Well, it certainly could lead to that. So again, in Washington, D.C., actually this week in Washington, D.C., and in last week, scientists from all over the world came together because of this little box that's sitting in your studio right now and what it represents.
Wow.
Scientists from the lead laboratories out of China. And you know, in China right now, China was the first country to publicly admit that they used this technology right here, CRISPR-Cas9 technology, to do germline genetic modification on human embryos. And that threw up some giant red flags. People are saying, wait a minute, maybe these are lines we shouldn't cross. Why? Because when you make modifications to a species at the germline level, this is at the very earliest embryonic level or at the sperm or egg level, those become permanent, heritable, make a part of the genome of that species. So everything born down line is going to carry those same character traits, good or bad. And so this has, for the longest time with bioethicists, been the line they've said we have to be very careful or maybe never cross over this line. So scientists from China, from the Academy of Medical Sciences out of Britain, from the top medical institutes and scientists out of America, they all got together in Washington, D.C. And if you go and Google this right now, you'll see where they're saying we have got to take extraordinary measures now to try to somehow create a universal moratorium on the use of this technology for making germline modifications to humans. Why? Because this technology could literally reshape all humanity from this point and forward, good or bad. You could create superhumans. You might create modern forms of Nephilim. You could create something that gives birth to a prion contamination, a disease strain for which we have no history. There's nothing about it that we would understand, and it could be devastating. If we get a chance on this show or the next one, maybe we should also talk about how terrorists have plans to use this kind of technology, and ask yourself this question: if a terrorist could use this to create a devastating plague, and if Tom Horn can get his hands on this, you can believe they can get their hands on it.
Indeed. Friends, do you realize the extent of what Tom is talking about? Could literally change what is now called a human being into something else. Now, we only have a few minutes today to talk about this. The documentary Inhuman is 3 hours long, and Tom, you've interviewed people who are basically in favor of human genetic research, as well as people like me who approach the genetic research from a biblical perspective, and I think of it as absolute blasphemy against God to change the basic nature of humanity. But let's talk for a minute about some people who might be in favor of genetic engineering.
Right. Well, some of the people that we interviewed, and these are all top, well-known, famous names in the transhumanist communities. Dr. James Hughes, who originally started out kind of lobbing grenades at Tom Horn. They wrote stuff on, his is the most well-known website out there for transhumanists, IEET, the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies, and all the world's top transhumanists blog and write over there. And they published an article over there at one point comparing me to the Unabomber and saying that guys like me are really dangerous and whatever. Well, I wanted to reach across the table and say, sit down with me. You tell me what you believe. This is not going to be a gotcha film. We're not going to set you up.
Yeah.
We're going to let you say what you believe. Well, people that get the film from you, Inhuman, and watch it will see him talking about how he is in favor of modifying, not just modifying humans, combining our genetic makeup with animals in order to produce a superior form. To go back to the companion book, Dead Pets Don't Lie, he also wants to uplift chimpanzees to give them basic cognition so that monkeys can attend school with kids. I mean, but these are very smart people. Wow. He's a professor. He teaches at the university level. So, and that is definitely a part of his worldview.
And of course, we've always heard about the super soldier, DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Administration, the government with the black budgets, and,
right.
And they're creating like a genetically modified soldier, perhaps. We don't know what they're doing, but we know they're into genetic modification.
Yes. Well, in fact, this year's presidentially approved DARPA budget has tens of millions of dollars in it specifically to use this kind of technology to create a new blueprint for our soldiers, future soldiers on the battlefield, to be genetically modified.
And Joe, coming from the other direction, the food industry is absolutely rife with this kind of experimentation, right?
It is. And again, people that think this is being regulated, it's just simply not the case. I want to add something to what Tom was saying, though, about the scientists that believe they can kind of organize what it is to be okay, your feelings, your spirituality, the way you reason, the way you think. They believe that they can organize these things into selectable attributes that then they can lever up and down. For example, Gary, you have a genetic makeup. You're part of your lineage, you're part of your mother's lineage, you're part of your father's lineage. But what science can't track is what really, at the end of the day, what makes you tick? What makes you Gary Stearman? What makes you look at the world the way that you view the world through that lens? And so the proposal that we're going to somehow organize the genetics now of let's say, the gray wolf and integrate that DNA into a human hybrid, but be able to organize the things we find desirable. We want him to be faster, but we don't want him to be aggressive. We want him to be stronger, but we don't want him to be fearful. And that we're going to lever all of these things and then create a predictable human. It's absolutely, in my opinion, the genetic liability is outrageous.
Using animal attributes in human beings. For example, animals can see ultraviolet light.
That's right.
And we can't.
That's
But
right.
Wouldn't it be nice if our eyes could detect ultraviolet light? Let's just bring in an animal gene into the human genome.
But this is something they're already working on, and maybe the next time I'm on your program, I can tell you about an experiment that was just conducted on a family member and what happened. I mean, it really goes into this idea of, could we open a doorway into supernaturalism through genetic manipulation?
Tom, we're out of time. This has gone, I think this is the fastest program I've ever done because there's so much to say in so little time. Inhuman, this 3 hours of concentrated and extremely well-edited material, I think should be in the hands of every Christian today. You need to know what the threat is, and you need to know how to pray. Inhuman, we're offering for $24.95 on the prophecywatchers.com online bookstore. And, by the way, we're offering a package, as we always do. And we're calling it the Pandemonium Package because one of the items in this package is Pandemonium's Engine, a book written by Tom Horn, along with Dead Pets Don't Lie, Forbidden Gates, and Zenith 2016. The Pandemonium Package, $69.95. All of these books having to do with the material we've been discussing. And with this package, you get this video, this 3-hour video set, 2 DVDs, absolutely free. And that's $69.95 on the online bookstore. That's prophecywatchers.com. Click the tab and go to the online bookstore and you can see how to order it. Guys, less than a minute. Wow, I need an hour. Yeah. We have less than a minute. Synopsize.
Yeah, it's my hope, Gary, that people will get the documentary, watch it, share it with other people, but also that ministries, churches. The one thing that I'm hoping this accomplishes is to get people of faith to begin a conversation, because we need to get engaged in the discussion around this so that we help mold the ethics, the restrictions, the guidelines under which conditions could this technology be used, under which it should never be used.
Joe, thanks for your contribution as well.
Thank you.
Together, you guys are an awesome team.
Thank you very much.
Let me tell you. And it's all about being aware of what's going on, folks. You need to know. Why? You need to know how to pray. And believe me, prayer is the answer to this one. It may be the only answer,
Yes.
Tom. I'm Gary Stearman. We're watching. You keep watching too. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.